I will be done by 5:30.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Do you swear to that, Merrick?
Well, believe me, my questions will be minimal.
I'll believe that when I see it.
Well, you know what? Based on
We're
my last
live.
results, I'm hoping to be home for the third
We're
period.
live. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Carrie Linklater. I'm your chairperson today, and I am joined via Zoom by Ms. Tracy Anderson and Mr. Marcel Laurando. Our city assessor is Mr. Merrick Froelich, and our administrative personnel is Mr. Jaswinder Kumar. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. And as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. This evening, we will be hearing items 2 through 7 on the docket. And could you please affirm the assessor and our first applicant?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Merrick Froelich.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, please state your full name. Mr. Neufeld?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry, there's some clipping. I don't know if it's me or you. Rocky Neufeld?
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Froelich and Mr. Neufeld. We're going to be looking at 44 Omens Creek Boulevard. And Mr. Froelich, whenever you are ready.
File number is 22-3635. Roll number is 130954200000. Assessed value that we have today is $1,747,000. Property we have was built in 1981. It has a wall height of 19 feet. It has a plan area of 16,313 feet. A leasable area of 18,013 and a land to building ratio of 4.9. Property is located in the northwest quadrant of the city of Winnipeg, and the property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out the income and expense mailer. In 2000, there was a sale of this property for $650,000, and there's also a lease that's dated August 31st, 2000. For 16,313 square feet at $7. In the lease per se, It doesn't include the second floor space, and you can see the second floor space on the top of page 3. But what's interesting overall is the GPI that we are using and the GPI that's provided us on this income expense mailer are very close in value. The only difference is our model value is a bit lower than the $7 that they reported, but in all, it's a wash. On page 2, you can see another picture of the subject property. And on page 3, you can see the 2 pictures that I've referred to. I have not inspected this property. On page 4, we got a couple additional pictures, just showing the location of where it's at. And then on page 5, you can end up seeing where they have the warehouse space and where they have this the second floor space where they have a lunchroom and a conference room and an office area. As we can see here on page 6, we have the 2 leasable areas of 16,313 square feet and 1,700 square feet. We have the 2 rents of $6.39 and $5 to come up with a GPI of 112,740. If you reference page 11 of my brief, and I just realized, I don't know what I think I left my calculator. If you actually take the 9,000, so on page 11, when you're seeing the lease in place where it shows the 16,313, if you go 9,510.08 times 12, it works out to 114,120. Meanwhile, our model is 112,740. So the actual GPI that's actually received, even though we valued it differently, both their numbers are very, very close together. With that being said, we've applied our 4% vacancy, our expenses at 3% and our shortfall at 385 to come up with 102,209. Using a 5.85% cap rate, we come up with a value of $1,747,000. On page 7, we got a list of comparables that are all in the northwest quadrant. They're all built a variety of ranges. You know, they're all in the square foot range between 15,000 and 23,000 square feet. Wall heights are similar. The subject property wall height's 19 feet. And what we have here is we have 18, 20, 23, and 22. We're showing rental rates. So the effective years are trying to be close within the subject property. And our rental rates vary between $7 and $9.75. But as you've seen before, that our model rent that we're using is very, very close to the actuals that they have received on an overall level. On page 9, we show our cap rates with regards to the subject property and our ranges that we've used. And on page 11, it's the income expense mailer that I've referenced. But here's an interesting bit of information that I'd like to share with you guys. So if you look on page 13, they're reporting an actual income of $23,718. There's also 2 additional additions that should be included with regard to the net operating income of $65,170, which is the cash to the owner, and of the mortgage interest of $9,936. If we use both of those numbers, it comes up to just around $99,000, which is very close to the model rent that we've generated of $102,209. Thank you very much, and that concludes my presentation.
I thank you. Mr. Neufeld, any questions?
Yes, sorry, I just was marking that last comment. Well, the 19-foot ceiling, is that exterior measured?
That is an exterior measure.
So do you know what the interior clear height would be?
I've never inspected this property. I've never been to this property, so I won't be able to answer that question.
Okay, fair to say that it's the width of the trusses?
That would be standard, yes.
Okay. On page 2, you indicate a rent term of 24 years and 8 months, and I'm looking at page 11, and it appears to differ. Was this an original term, to your knowledge, of 24 years?
No, that's what we've ended up pulling up from the system when it first came into existence. But, this is what we have on file, but I do have the current lease in the mailers here, so I'd be working off that on page 11. Because it shows the original,
Right.
the original lease that they have on page 11 shows August 31st, 2000. So I don't know the details of the initial lease that had taken place.
But that's a move-in date though, right? Not a lease start date?
That's what we have on file here. So I'm assuming that it's a step-up lease. If you give me one
Okay.
sec here, just let me double check here for you something. In 2013, they reported a $6 rent.
Okay, so you don't know if that was okay. It's probably not really important whether it was. It's just that I noticed a discrepancy here on your terms. You
Well,
had
where's the
mentioned
discrepancy? I don't understand that because the original mailer that we received shows a start date of August 31st, 2000. So where's the discrepancy? Because this is what we received from the owner.
well, because August 2000 to April 2024, 23 years and 8 months, not 24 years and 8 months.
Okay, well, that could,
Right.
well, yeah, well, 8 months. So if you go August, well, you know what? It should be 7 months a year. No, because like September,
Yeah.
October, November is 4. January, February, March, that's 8 months, Mr. Neufeld.
No, but there's a year off, and it's not a major issue, but I just noticed it, and I don't think it matters much. On page 6, was the evaluation was done by the model?
Yes, it was.
Now, you had stated in your closing comments that when you read on page 13, that the net income was 99,000. I didn't get the number right, total.
Well,
but it was
what I
around
did is
99.
I roughly said 24 plus 65
That's
plus 9. So what ends up happening here, so 9 and 9 is 18 plus 1 is $98,000, just rounding. So it could be $99,000.
yeah, that's fine. Now you're comparing it on your page 6 to your NOI of 102,000, which is after vacancy risk. Now you haven't done that in the same method. I mean, that number should compare to your 112,000, not your 102,000, shouldn't
Well,
it?
I guess what I'm saying here, it's a lot different than the net operating income that you've provided here of $85,000. So
We're just asking about your so
no, but
99,000.
when I bring out
Without a
information like
vacancy,
this, I use your information as a guideline for my presenting, and that's what I've done here.
Question: shouldn't the 99,000 be compared on the same line as your 112,000 potential rent?
Well, but the point is, with that being said, then we'd also have to adjust the vacancy as well because this property has no history of vacancy. So maybe the 4% vacancy that we're using is being very generous.
I'm just talking about general theory. You're going to apply a vacancy anyway, aren't you?
There'll always be a vacancy applied, but it's a matter of the vacancy being used.
I'm sure the board understands what I'm saying. In terms of your capitalization rate, on your page 9, you're not, how this would be classed in the industrial, and I notice there's no difference in the rates anyway, but how would this be rated?
I think I would be rating this as an
A,
industrial,
B?
as an industrial A. Because it's newer in
Industrial A.
age and
And what makes-
it's smaller in square footage. So the primary drivers with regard to this cap rate would be the age, which is that it was, just give me 1 sec here. No, you know what? I take that back. It would be age and size. Well, age within that regards as well.
Okay, and how about anything to do with the ceiling height?
Ceiling height, I would say, it's good for the property that it's being used right now, because what ends up taking place is, because if the ceiling height was, say, 30 feet plus in a newer building, you know, the rents would be significantly higher on this size of property. So there's a scale. So you know, it's within that range. It's not 12 feet.
But is ceiling height a factor in your cap rate?
Ceiling heights are a factor. Because it all
And what
comes.
was the site originally designed and built? Do you know?
No, I do not know.
Those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, any questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Mr. Larondo, did you have any questions?
No questions at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I also have no questions. If you'd like to proceed, Mr. Neufeld, with your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Earlier I had submitted some just rebuttal information, and it's rather general in nature, but it's concerning, and I know we don't compare assessments, but it's rebuttal in terms of classification of properties between A's and B's, and
I didn't receive the rebuttal evidence that you're speaking of.
it was filed with the board, and it's just board orders showing the same class of building where they've been resolved between 6.5 and 8.5%. And I don't need to go through them all one by one unless you want me to, but it's there's about 15 of them. And then unless they had any questions on that, I was just the evidence.
Yeah, he's gonna put that in the.
If you can just give me a minute, Mr. Neufeld.
Sure.
Sorry, what is it? Applicant rebuttal. Here.
I thought we weren't supposed to include board orders as rebuttal evidence.
This is not on the property, but these are on other properties, Mr. Neufeld, so it doesn't really have any impact on the property we're arguing today.
Yeah, and I understand that point, and it's a rather let's just say it's an issue relating to the method. I asked the assessor a question about whether it was an A or a B, and he said it was an A, and it's in regard to that matter.
So you're not going to be talking quantum then?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say all these other properties were done, but it's just an issue, one of the issues that we'll be putting forward, and I'm just saying that it's a rebuttal because the assessor misclassed the property.
Okay, well, if you strictly stick to the classification of the property, whether it's A or B.
Yes.
Okay, but we're going to hear the rebuttal at the end. If you could give us your brief.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and okay, thank you.
But isn't a mute point if there's no difference between industrial A and industrial B?
Sorry, Mr. Froelich.
No, I'll let Mr. Neufeld present his information.
Okay, and then if you want to discuss this rebuttal further, we will. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Mr. Neufeld, if you'd like to give us your brief.
Yes, thank you. So the subject property is I guess in questioning, I'd asked if what the assessor knew, and it was originally built as a recycling facility. And sometime along the way, it became obtained by a freight company. It is on a short-term lease. As far as we're aware of, it will not be renewed. They have better places to go. And the reason is fairly simple. The assessor has 19 feet height, but that would indicate about 16 clear. So that's room for 2 pallets. Pallet is 5 feet. And then you have to be able to lift it up a foot or two. So that's the problem with this site. The preferred site is 27 clear, which allows 5 pallets and 2 with the 2 feet for lifting. That and the paid rent on it is not a fully net lease. It's written as $7, but as you can see in the statements, there are unrecoverable costs. I'm not saying non-recoverable, there's unrecoverable. And there were approximately $4,000. And I'm not sure if I've got it in our report, but it does show up on the assessor's page 13, where you can see that the common area recoveries total approximately $5,600, whereas the recoverable expenses are $9,780. So there's a shortfall on recoveries, and that takes the $111,000 down by $4,000 to $107,000. So that is the income, the net income that's coming off the site. And this is probably another reason why we were discussing this matter with Altus earlier in the day, and we both had appeals. Altus is representing the tenant, and we're representing the owner. And to my knowledge, they never had this information that the lease was not truly net. And so we had discussed it earlier and felt that since we were representing the owner, we'd be the ones who could bring forward the testimony that we were dealing with a semi-gross lease. So the income potential income being $107,000, and vacancy rates were done by looking at the Johnson report, and the summary of the Johnson report is on page 6. We looked at single tenant investment industrial vacancy rates, and the particular region of Inkster is fairly large. It's the largest one in the city. And then we also average that out with the rate for the entire city. I'm just noticing here that there's a slight error. Our vacancy rate should be 5.2%, not 5.5%. If you're looking at page 6, the vacancy rate in 21. Now this is published in June of 21, but this is for data that was accumulated in December of 2020, shows Inkster at 4.2% and overall at 6.2%. So it should indicate 5.2. And should the assessor wish to complain, mistakenly, of course, that this was post-reference, then I will defer to the previous year of 2020, which is 13.3% in Inkster and 8.8% overall. But to be fair, it should be about 5.2%. I'm not at my computer, so I can't make any correction, but that would indicate a small change in the NOI of a few $100s. Non-recoverables are, of course, present in all properties, and on our presentation on the last 2 pages is our workup of managed properties and the non-recoverables. That's page 34 and 35. And this is a sampling of retail, office, and industrial, and showing that the average rate is 9.81% of non-recoverables in the statements. And to put this in perspective, the value we have is also taken though directly from the statements on page 13, the assessor has it, which is $8,830. So that's the actual that they spent. So in this case, we thought that that was appropriate to put that in. 5% is a potential to use as well. In this case, it was with a pending vacancy coming up in a year. Thought that was more prudent to go to that number. Then 2% structural reserve. And this replicates the modeling that was done 3 years ago, not the modeling the city has decided now. Shortfall calculation is based on the actual taxes and estimated utilities and repair and maintenance, $6. The city's model on shortfall is completely inappropriate because like their cap rates, it's applied one rate for every type of property. So we know that there are properties today that are getting $10 and $11 in the industrial world. And we also know that there's some that are getting $2. And the assessor's model applies the same shortfall rate of $3.85. The major component of a shortfall is the tax. So this shortfall should be variable. It should not be a one shortfall rate because it will be reflected in the building, and it's not been. And that's an error in the model. The other error that I brought up in the model has to do with the cap rate, in that there is a world of difference. The assessment department, even though they carry headings of Class A and Class B, tend to apply all the same cap rates. And it's true that there are some very attractive investment properties in the industrial world, but there are also a lot of working buildings. This building started its life as a scrap metal, or sorry, as a recycling station, not scrap metal, but just general recycling state and sorting station, and then became a small scale distribution center. And whatever fate awaits it in April from a year from now, we don't know, but it is not Class A. Colliers has classification on our industrial side, and that's on our page 25. Now in our 25, you can see that we have Class B and Class B as well, and yes, the rates are the same. However, we also have definitions on our Class A and our Class B on page 26, and they would show that on the industrial side, that how we rate buildings. This building is not an A nor a B, it's a sub B. Specifically, the issues with it have to do with the major one is the ceiling height, which can't be changed. So you have lesser interest from users right now. The strongest demand is distribution, and all the new product is being built, as I said, 27-foot minimums. There's some that are, and that's interior clear, not exterior. And some buildings are now 32. That's a reflection of what's happening with the world in terms of distribution. Locationally, it's somewhat deficient in Omens. The access to it is either by Brookside, which is a asphalt covered gravel road with ditches, or Logan, which is a rutted track that's broken down everywhere. It has not done well with time, so it's not, and the access driving in is difficult for the 53-foot semi-trailer to get onto these roads. The modern design, if you look at Centerport Way, which is done with high-speed turnoff access ins and outs, as well as trailer access to the sites, is the preferable way to go. And that's what investors are looking for: quick in and out for their trailers off a major thoroughfare. So, and these aren't like, one problem kills everything in it, just like a diminishing value with all the little problems. So when we looked at a cap rate on page 2, we had factored in those issues. including these concepts. And I know that there's some typos in this page, but essentially the location is deficient, and the building size is more deficient than shown because of the ceiling height. This was done over Christmas, so I think it was just a bit of a rush job. But I've been representing this property for 10 years, so it's like reading a memorized script for me, and I know, and hopefully it sounds like that. And in terms of building itself, we look at three factors on the building, which is the year built, the quality, and the condition. They're all three distinct separate areas. And it's not new anymore. It doesn't stack up to the brand new competition, so it would suffer in its interest in both getting rent and returns. The other interesting feature about the last 2 years is that there have been no investment sales. There have been a lot of owner occupied sales, but the investment properties have not been transacting. And investment property means a property that has a lease in place and a non-arm's length landlord, and sold on the premise of its income. These aren't happening, and COVID just was impacting all the investment markets, and plus there was a lot of new product in Rosser in Centerport that was moving into the neighborhood. So that was one of the reasons that it is more difficult to do this, and Colliers has gone back to what we call the band of investment or mortgage equity method, and that is, what is the difference between achieved potential interest rates and the spread between them. And this is not the primary method of doing it, but the report is also done comparing sales of national products and trends in Winnipeg and comparing it to. So essentially what we get is, in our cap rate report, is a review, a sensibility review of caps, and on page 24, showing that regardless of everything, there still has to be a spread between the mortgage, which is and the cap rate, which indicates the property's strength to pay its mortgage, which is why the income method was invented and why it's applied in the world. So there's no such thing as a 5.8% or anything in that nature with industrial, because you can't get financing at 1%. Never could, and certainly can't now. The cap rate of 7%, and I'm stretching myself here, but I think it was well supported so far by what we've seen at the Board of Revision. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Froelich, questions?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Larondo, questions?
No questions, Madam Chair.
I also have no questions. In regards to your rebuttal information, Mr. Neufeld, it's board orders, and it's board orders on properties that we didn't hear. There's no evidence, so I'm thinking it's not going to serve you well at all. But if you would like to, sorry, but
no, that's fine. And I was,
but if,
I was just, yeah.
I think you spoke about the building, though, correct? Did you inspect it?
Yes, I did. Yes, I've been in there when it was the recycling facility. I haven't been in since it was altered for distribution.
Okay. Did you want to speak any further on the condition of the building? I think you've got it covered, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's fair to say that it's had a hard life, and even though it's only built in 1981, it's just going to be going to another mid to low level users, demand user. It's not going to appeal to the upper end of the market. So it's essentially a sub B building, and that's what we anticipate would be a provable cap rate.
All right, I thank you. Do either of you have any wish for a summation on this property?
I do.
All right, if you would like to proceed.
Thank you. When we look at the Winnipeg marketplace for industrial properties, 65% of the properties are owner occupied. So when Mr. Neufeld talks about industrial sales and when he goes his little presentation, properties sell, 65% are owner occupied. So when we develop our cap rate analysis, we look at the sales that have taken place, and we do the best we can to develop cap rates. Our cap rates are within reasons of what ends up taking place in the marketplace. There could be some dispute to that, but the point is we always believe that we're reasonable in our evaluation process. When we also look at the sales per square foot, when we do our cap rate analysis, do these properties sell within range of what other industrial properties are selling for per square foot? And when we do those tests, I feel confident with the value that we've presented here. Another important consideration, Mr. Neufeld has gone through extensive communicating with us about how this property is not in the northwest quadrant. It's not off Rossmere. It's not in Centerport. Well, the dynamics of this property is completely different than those ones. Those rents are significantly higher than what we have here. So we presented here a rent which is reasonable. We presented a cap rate which is reasonable based on the size of the property. It's just like when we go through the analysis of when we look at, are there more buyers for a $300,000 home, or are there more buyers for a $1 million home? Not everyone could buy these large properties in Centerport. So the availability of buyers, where the potential of 65% of the properties being owner occupied, we feel comfortable with regards to that. And finally, I feel comfortable with the value that we've presented here. The value hasn't gone through 2000, industrial values haven't gone down since previous assessments. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. Mr. Neufeld, did you have a wish for a summation?
Sure, why not? They're just getting ready to drop the puck, and I'm staring off in the distance here. What's happened in the last 2-3 years is migration, and it's caused by two factors. One is the creation of Centerport, and the other is what's happened in the world with COVID. But the truth of the matter is, when you look at on page 4, where we put in rents, is what we've done is focused on existing stock, not new stock. And it's true that the new stock has got a lot of interest, and there's a lot of drive, a lot of motivation, but people vacating the old stock. And I was just looking to see if we had put in the new rent for Amazon's building on, and if I haven't found it, don't worry, I won't quote it. On Plymouth. No, oh yeah, there it is. On page 4, it's right near the bottom. 11 Plymouth, and this is old stock, $650 a foot, rather than in Centerport at $11 a foot, and that's what we're looking at. And bigger is better if you got a high ceiling. And this one is just going to be less desirable in the market as all the new product pops into Centerport, which is going to be several million square feet so far, and more to come. So the values went down from 20 to from 18 to 21. They definitely went down. The overall values if you average it with new product, may have gone up as the assessor's model indicates, but that's not the reality. And we're coming from a position where we sell the properties, we buy properties for people, we manage the properties. And there's no looking at spreadsheets and trying to figure out some hypothetical value. We just go out and talk to the clients and say, what do you want? High space, they want high cube space, and they want a better location than this. They want a quick in and out. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, I thank you. We are going to move on to our next property at 75 Ames Road.
Why does everybody call that Ames Road? It's Amy's.
Is it?
Yes, it's named after the auto wrecker that was there. It's still there.
Mr. Froelich, I understand there is a preliminary issue with this, correct?
I would believe so.
You've got a wreck.
I do got a wreck. I don't consider that to be a preliminary issue though, but.
Well,
yeah.
sorry. Yes.
Yeah. And so what I've done here, I'll just go through my first bit of the presentation and then I'll explain to you my thought process. File number is 223639, roll number 08005824200. Assessed value that we had for this property was $3,628,000. And then after my analysis and when I looked at the spreadsheets on the income and expense mailer information to us provided by the owner, I felt that a value of $3,443,000 would be a fair reflection. So what I've done here is, if you look on page 2 on my brief, what ends up happening is, well, there's two things. I adjusted the square footage by 5 square feet based on the original plans that have taken place. So initially we had 25,645 and the original permits was 25,640. So I've used that. But what I've done is, you see the GPI at 222,555. And then if you reference the income and expense mailer that was shown on page 14, they're showing a rental income of 222,630, and they're showing in that lease. So based on that information, our model rent was a bit high. I've adjusted the square footage because if you look on page 14 of my brief, the yearly rental rate went down from the previous cycle, and I'll show that in my presentation later on. But the adjusted, because the second floor space is nice office space, even though the lease is not written up that way, the overall blended rate works out to $8.68, which is what I'm presenting today, which matches what's been provided to us by the income and expense mailer. Another point that I do want to mention with regards to this is that I had this property on appeal for business assessment purposes in 2022. And I actually spoke with Chad Irving, who's the person listed on the mailer. Spoke with Chad Irving on December 12th at 11 a.m. He confirmed that with me that the property is a net lease. However, the mailer only shows the main area, not the second floor area. And then subsequently for the appeal, I adjusted the rent for the appeal. And so subsequently, being consistent with the information that Chad provided to us, you know, I provided a rec of $8.68, which is higher than the $7 that's used by the applicant. Thank you for the quick summary.
Thank you. So, Mr. Neufeld, did you wish to accept the assessor's recommendation?
No, sorry.
We'll proceed.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Froelich, if you'd like to continue.
Sure thing. So what we're looking at here is this property was built in 2000. It has a wall height of 22 feet. It has the plan area of the 21,705, and we use 25,645. The land to building ratio is 8 to 1, just over 8 to 1. So there is potential for future development to take place here if the property owner decides to, in one way or another. Property owner has completed the income and expense mailer on a timely basis. On the bottom of page 3, you can see the picture of it. And subsequently, you can see some additional pictures on page 4 and on page 5. What is interesting about this property, and it's funny how things change. So at one point, there was access to this property both on eastbound and westbound for this property. Unfortunately, now there's only access to the westbound. And if a person's traveling eastbound, they have to go all the way to La Jamodier and go through the interchange. What I have on page 6 is I show the original permit value that showed up here. So what they had here is they showed the 25,640 square feet that have been used for the area. So that is the area that we use here. The initial permit value was $1.1 million. And then on page 7, I'm showing the main floor space. And on page 8, I'm showing the second floor space that we have here. So if you're looking at the second floor space here, you can clearly see that there's office areas, there's training rooms, there's some more office space. So there is value in this. So even though the lease is only listed at $21,000, I've made the adjustments to be reflective of the entire area of the space. I won't reference page 9 of my brief, but if I actually go to page 2 of my brief, which shows what we use here, is that the property size of this property is larger than the previous one that we looked at, and it's also newer, right? So with that being said, because it's a larger size, the cap rate becomes higher, but then subsequently the cap rate's a bit lower because it's also based on location and other sales. So what we have here is we have a 5.9% cap rate, and we come up with the $3,443,000. What we have here is we have some rent comparables that are in the neighborhoods. There are a wide variety. So what I tried doing is I tried to be close to the subject size property. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any that were close to the year being built, the 2000. But subsequently, if you actually look at the rent that's actually on the mailer and what I've done in my recommendation, I'm being quite fair. I would now reference, so what I've done here is on page 13, where everyone has the opportunity to show this. So on page 13, what I did is for reference purposes, the actual rent went down from 17 to 20. So in 2017, the actual rent was $229, just under 800, which worked out to 1053. When I included the second floor space, the blended rent was $8.96. And I just shared with you that I spoke with the person who completed the income and expense mailer. Another point to look at is on page 14, just giving you the overview of how I came up with the $8.68. I spoke with Chad. He said it was a net rent, even though there's no recoverable shown on the income and expense mailer. I am using the 222,630, which is very close to what he has here. And what's interesting is they're reporting a net operating income of $205,110. And then if we look on page 2 of my brief, with regard to the net operating income that I'm using, or that we're using at the department, it's $204,868. So we're being quite reasonable with regards to what they're reporting on the mailer and what we have here as the model. On page 15, it's showing that that there is a net lease, and then it's not a step up. That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Neufeld, did you have questions?
Yes, I do. Have you inspected the property?
No, I have not.
Now, you're showing actual year built and effective year 2000. And are you taking that from, what's your source on that?
That's what we have in the system, and we have, and in our notes for the property, we have nothing, from 2004 on. I have no additional other information on here.
Well, you've got a sketch on page 7, and that's showing the sections of the building. You're not aware that only a part of the building was reconstructed in 2000?
You know,
For example,
I've never inspected this building, so I don't have any details with regard to this building here.
for
I
example,
base
look
my
at
valuation on what we have for what's been reported by the income and expense mailer.
page 8. We show mezzanine from a 1999 mezzanine floor enlarged from original 1986. So you see there that it was an alteration, not a reconstruction.
Okay. I see that now, yes.
Okay, and did you ask Chad for a copy of the lease from 1999?
No, because I thought the data that we received from the 2017 and 2020 mailers was sufficient enough.
And did you ask him for any other leases of the subject?
You know what? I felt comfortable with the information that I asked Chad.
Okay, and okay. And did you ask him anything about the arrangements with Wajax on the cost recovery?
We usually base our information on what's provided us on the mailers. I didn't expand upon this. When it comes to calling people on income and expense mailers, I like to be efficient with my time, and I was comfortable with the information that he provided me. And time is worth money, and I didn't want to waste more time than what he had provided us, that he provided me.
Well, on your page 14, he's telling you that their net income as full was 205,000. You see that, and you're now using 222,000 as full. So you're relying on that?
Well, the point is, it's 22,630 what they show on page 14, and so I would have to do the math here.
I'm just looking at page 14, which is his declaration. You trusted his statement. So on page 14, it says 205,000, but you don't trust it to come.
Where do you see the 205,000 on page 14, Mr. Neufeld?
Net operating income, 0% vacant.
Oh, on net operating income, 205,000. Yes. I thought you were talking about the rental income.
Well, that is the rental income without vacancy, which would be the potential income before vacancy risk, correct?
Well, but when you do a property valuation for the property here, this property has we're using a vacancy rate of 3.5%. You know, what we're looking at here is when we're looking at the valuation of this property, even if you want to factor in a vacancy, Mr. Neufeld, there's a huge discrepancy between the vacancy, the information that's been provided us on the mailer, and the $124,000 that you're using here today. So
well, I don't want to interrupt you, but I will. We've been having this little debate with assessors for decades. Okay, it is clear. Potential income without vacancy is potential income without vacancy. He says 205,000, you say 222. Do you disagree with that?
Mr. Neufeld, the rental income is $222,630. He's reporting $205,110. I'm not the accountant. I'm not the expert on this.
Okay, well, that's fine. That's all I want.
So I'm using it as a guideline. And at the end of the day, you know, the income that the net operating income that you're using is significantly lower than what he's reported here.
That's my issue, not yours. We're just talking about your evidence. Now, carrying on with that, on page 14, he's showing leasable area of 21,720 feet. Why didn't you trust his opinion there?
Because the original plans that have taken place is 25,000 square feet, 25,640, I do believe. Yeah, 640. And 640. And just because what I've done the adjustment for that to make it balance out to account for the second floor space, because there are occasions in leases where they only use the main floor and they don't include the second floor space. And I've done an adjustment for that.
Okay, but it's not the same number that the owner uses, is it?
No, it's not, but in the plans and a person can see that there is second floor space on this property. So unless maybe you're seeing something that I don't see, Mr. Neufeld, because I clearly see on my brief here that there is second floor space here, and on the floor plans there's second floor space.
I'm asking you about page 14. You testified.
I asked and answered, Lady Chairperson, I think.
Yes, Mr. Neufeld, can we move along?
Yes. Are you using the same rental rate for the upper level as the main level?
It's a blended rate based on the actuals.
You have that blended number?
Yeah, it's in my recommendation of $8.68.
No, but sorry, do you have the breakdown then?
No, it's like, you know, because it doesn't have the second floor doesn't have a separate entrance and exit for the property. It can't be leased by itself. It's one economic unit. So I used one rent for the entire economic unit.
Okay. And what was this? Was there any consideration in the model? Sorry, I just make sure I just use the right terms here. So you had the if I'm looking at page 2, the model did the left-hand side, and then you made some adjustments to the right side. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. And I see there's some square footage and a rental rate. That's the and the vacancy. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I made a mistake there on the vacancy. I guess it should have been, yeah.
Has there been any indication by either in the model or by your own application of a consideration for the loss of access? And I don't just mean from the
I didn't do any consideration for lack of access because the rental rate didn't change.
At the time they drew up their lease, did they not have access directly from the perimeter?
Let me double check here, because this is the original lease that had taken place. No adjustments were made for that.
Okay. And in regard to the capitalization rate, I take it that this was model driven and same issues as before, age, location, etc.
Yep.
And if you had used the actual age as indicated on page 8 of 1986, would the cap rate differ?
Yeah, well, see what is interesting about this is when we look at the property here that had taken place, and just bear with me 1 sec here. So in 2000, there was a land transfer that took place of $1.6 million. In 2000, there was additional construction value of $1 million. So we're looking at $2.7 million that was allocated to this property in 2000. Since that period of time, with regards to the permits. The property owner has not provided us any additional other permits. And it does state here that in 1999, the new permit addition was $1.1 million. So, I'm not disputing the fact that the original building was built in 1986, but overall, we're looking at this property with regards to the curb appeal of this property. We feel that the rent that we're using in the overall value is fine. I think what Mr. Neufeld, you're just looking at semantics, Mr. Neufeld. You're not actually looking at what the mailer actually states.
No, I was looking at the building from the inside.
Yeah.
That's not called semantics. That's called actual.
Yeah, well.
These are my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, did you have any questions?
I have no questions, Madam Chair.
Mr. Larondo, questions?
Merrick, are there any services on Amy's Road?
Pardon me, sorry.
Are there any services on the road, water, sewer?
What we're showing here. Sewer. I don't, you know what? It doesn't say so. It doesn't say so, which seems odd to me because.
There is no water and sewer in that area.
No, you're correct.
What is he backed onto? What's behind him?
Well, there seems to be an auto record, it looks like, or some sort of car storage.
Correct. What the car record? What's to the east of him?
To the east. Well, it's I'm not familiar with the company. It says High Track 1974. Are they affiliated with other properties? I don't know, Mr.
These properties all used to be one, and Mr. Bourgeois split them up when he sold them, but it was all auto wrecking at one time.
Okay.
And there is no services from what I can see.
And I don't see any services either.
Yeah. Does that not affect the saleability or the value of a property when there's no water and sewer?
Well, it could be a consideration, but they've been in business since 1986, and they obviously have water and electrical and other services there, so it seems to be working for them.
We don't know what the costs are because he didn't include them. I guess his tenants must pick up the cost of bringing the water in and hauling it in then.
Or they have a septic field, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe a septic field, but you can't use the water in the area. The water is non-potable in this area.
Yeah, you're answering questions that I can provide no value to.
Yeah,
Okay, I've got no other questions.
thank you. Mr. Froelich, I just have a couple of quick questions. It was brought up that this property had two accesses at one point.
Yeah.
And they've lost the access to the perimeter, correct?
No, they still have access to there's no access from the traveling eastbound.
Okay.
Traveling eastbound from St. Anne's to La Jamodier, there used to be a turnoff at from going north towards the subject property. Now you'd have to go all the way to the perimeter.
Okay, thank you. And you don't know when that took place exactly?
You know what? I think it actually took place probably within when I had this on a BA appeal last cycle, when I was looking at older maps, I would say within the past 5 years.
Okay.
But I'm not the expert on this property.
That's fine. Also, you stated that you didn't inspect this property, correct?
That is correct.
But do you know when it was last inspected?
What we have on file here is that, you know what? I do not know when it was last inspected. And I have no information here to state that, you know.
Okay, that's fine. I thank you. Mr. Neufeld, would you like to give us your brief, please?
Yes, I would. Sorry, a little computer. I'm a little bit handicapped here. I'm not allowed in the office, and I needed my paper file because we're still paper, and I had some stupid COVID positive test, so I'm stuck at home. And what I did send you was some rebuttal, and it's only part of the rebuttal. I have the rest in printed format that I couldn't get from my files. And hopefully it'll be adequate to explain our position. The assessor discussed speaking with the property manager, and he is incorrect in saying that the property manager either the property manager was the property manager is incorrect in stating that this is a net lease. It never has been, not since 2000. In 2000, the building was substantially changed. The office portion, the two-level portion stayed, and then the rear portion was redone for higher ceiling for use for hydraulic equipment. And at that point, the lease was rewritten on a cost recovery basis. So it was never a market lease. And the sample I sent you in rebuttal shows another change that happened later on for an extension, and shows what a cost recovery is. You're very rare that people will actually document this and show it to you. But in this case, there is proof that it was all done 15-year term cost recovery. And to put that in perspective, a normal building, you'll look at 35 years for amortization to set how much income you need to get your returns. So 15 years is accelerated, and it's high repayment. It's a mortgage payment, a high mortgage payment. And the tenant agreed to it. The point is, it's not a market lease, and it's much higher than a market lease. The other issue that came up is then the loss of access. At the time the lease was written, on my page 1, you can see that there's a road showing from Perimeter Highway to Amy's Road. That's gone. And when the lease was up, they had access. So someone comes from either side of the perimeter, turns in, and they can get direct access. Now, it certainly was unsafe, but it was beneficial to the people who used this road. So that's gone, and now the only access is from La Jamodier on the east side. They are working on hooking this up with Saint Anne's on the west side, but it has not been completed. They still haven't achieved all the road connections and access rights. And part of the holdback on this is that the province is going to be doing a redevelopment of this intersection. It's on their top 1 or 2 priorities to potentially do a grade level crossing here. And this is all in preparation for it, along with the service roads. But in the interim, you have someone who overpaid for a property in 2000 and lost all his access. The exact dates for it losing this were I have the sketch here. That one I have electronically, but it's well before our Manitoba Highway sketch is dated I want to move along here. Dated June 2000. June 2000. I think I got that right. Yeah. Well, that was when all this planning had begun. So well before the reference date, but well after the signing of the deal. So essentially what we looked at this is it was going to go to a market number because the actuals were not reliable. The second issue is the upper level space. Both tenant and owner agree that it's not rentable. It was built at a time when there was a desire for upper level office for a previous user. And after the conversion, they made the lease deal on 21,720 square feet, and they just ignored the rest of the space. It's there. It's not usable. I do have a lot of pictures of it. It's empty. It's obviously empty. I was in there in October of 2021. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to provide pictures of that. This is again done over Christmas, so a big rush to get these in. I never oversaw preparation of this, but I was up there, and it's essentially mothballed space. And as you can see from the owner's income and expense form, which I was aware of, that both parties considered it not to be rentable. There's also the lease I mentioned, which I did not get you, which provides the rentable area. So it exists. It provides no value in everyone's opinion, including the people who've been in there, professionals to review it. So we're looking at a rent of $7, and we're not taking into account the lack of services. We're just looking at it as a highway commercial operation, which is kind of a separate market sector entirely from industrial. So this should be considered highway commercial. So there's some interest as highway commercial, but then the city of Winnipeg zoning is restrictive. This whole area used to be zoned MR, which is industrial rural, incredibly permissive. You could do all sorts of things there. It's where you would have gas stations and fertilizer operations. That all got rezoned and changed to the M2 that it is right now. And with that downsizing and usage, we then thought it was probably fair to compare it with other industrial properties in Winnipeg. And page 3, we've got a number of these, and these are clean rents. That's what we strive to do, is have nothing with an influence in it on tenant improvements or amortizing improvements in leases. We just wanted clean numbers. We did go to the higher end of our scale, having to do with the highway commercial. The provision of water services is as it stands today not an issue, because with their usage, when I was there, I think there were 3 people working, so it's not a heavy human occupancy load, and conversion to another use would put some stress on the services and make it of less interest. We used vacancies at 5.5% and non-recoverables of 5% estimate. The shortfall was based on the high tax rate, and again, as I mentioned earlier, so our NOI was 124,000. Now the cap here at 6.5%, I didn't prepare this. I would have been much more critical about this. We have jobs to do, and I'm not preparing these briefs anymore. My personal opinion, I was looking at last year's presentation, and we were asking 8.5%, and that was to account for the loss of highway access and the lack of services. That would be my thought today, that it should be somewhere around that area. And in the sake of expediency, I'm just going to make a quick calculation for you on that basis. I do notice that there is 2 errors on here, though, in terms of small errors. It's amazing what you notice when you're sick and you have nothing else to look at. But but these. I would just say that given all these errors, that would cap it at 8% rather than 8.5%. And that comes to a value of 1,558,875, 1,558,875, rounded to 1,559,000. As to the previous year's assessments, you know, they're under appeal. What can I say? We caught this property rather late. It was a national contract from Wajax, and we came in and I don't know if it ever been looked at before, and so we're trying to address these issues. But again, it's the lack of services. It's cut off from the highway. It's the paid rent is not the paid rent. It's the mothballed second floor area, and it's not a great investment property. Now, as of right now, the predominant usage has shifted more to servicing farm hydraulic operators. So, you know, that's the positive point about it. It's well positioned, being inside the city limits, yet perimeter highway access for farm customers, and that is a positive. But if you can't come into the site because the access roads aren't clear, we're not talking about destination-oriented people who know all the routes into the city when you're coming from the farm somewhere and trying to get to the site. So it's not conducive in their mind. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Froelich, did you have any questions?
Just, well, just to make it short. So Mr. Neufeld, is this a brand new lease that has taken place for this property?
No, there was what I sent
Well,
in.
because on the document that you sent us, it says April 1st, 2020.
Yeah, what you see is it's an extension, and what I'm showing you with that is that the extension was based on taking one portion and amortizing it over 15 years, and 3 more portions and amortizing them over, I think it was 40 months, and that's how they came up with the rent. So it's a cost recovery document. I don't think it's fair to call it a lease. And that is the format of the original lease that I sent that original lease to the city when I got it, and it is in my printed files. It's not a lease. Nothing. I mean, it's like trying to tax somebody's bank loan. That's not a lease.
Okay, Mr. Neufeld, but what was was an adjustment made from the 2017 income and expense mailer where it was almost $230,000, and they've done an $8,000 adjustment on the lease in 2020 for the lack of access?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, on page 13 of my brief, do you have that in front of you right now?
Yeah.
What was the lease on page 13?
I have no idea. I can't read this.
Okay. Well, if the other panel members can see, does it look like 229,797?
That appears to be a gross income because there's unrecoverables on here.
Okay.
So 214,535.
Well, okay. Well, I haven't provided the information. I just took this off of here because this is what was given to us because it's done manually. But on above there, it shows that it's a net income, and there's a reduction from the $230,000 to 228. And so I think they have accommodated the access issue with regards to the new rental agreement. That's how it appears to me.
I don't think that there's any connection whatsoever. I mean, that's not stated. What this is a relationship from 2 companies in Alberta, in Edmonton, who are One is changing the tenant requires work to be done. The landlord does it and then takes it as on his lease and amortizes it over a short-term period and alters the rent. So this is a massive cost recovery operation. It's not a rent. This isn't the way rents work.
You know, so you can't explain to me why there's a reduction of $8,000 from the 17 mailer from the 2020?
I have my documentation going forward from this, and I have some more somewhere, but I don't see where you're coming from, and to speculate that the tenant, the landlord is out of the goodness of his heart reducing the rent, that's rather a stretch.
No other questions.
Great, thank you. Ms. Anderson?
I just had one question about the upper space. You claim that it is not usable, and several people, professionals have said that, but if it's not unusable, it's unusable for this particular person, is it then deemed unusable going forward in forever?
There might be other users who could take advantage of it. That's quite possible. But you know, it's a double-edged sword, because then you're going to come back and say, well, it's fitted out originally for office. So that means that you're going to have demand on services, which means that you're going to have to do something about the water and the sewer. So you could be forced in a situation where you could have to pay several $100,000 for connections, if they're possible to get, in order to get a few dollars in rent. It makes no sense. It's the whole thing is like, you know, spend more money than you'll ever earn on it, and not, I think, and that's the way most people were looking at it. Keep the operation down to a small size, low employee count, and not worry about spending hundreds of thousands on services. That's the message I got from the tenant.
Okay, thank you. Just a follow-on question then what was the renovation that was done that required rent recovery or the cost recovery?
Well, every single one of them. The first one was dated in 1999, 2000, and when you look at the picture, I'm trying to see who's got the best picture here. I had great inside shots. You can see it clearly. Okay, on the assessor's page 5. You see the bottom picture?
Yes.
Okay, the high ceiling space, that's all new.
I gotcha.
And then the low ceiling space with the portion that juts out, that's all old.
Understood. Okay, thank you very much. That's all for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Laurando, any questions?
I've got no further questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. My question was asked and answered. Gentlemen, do you have a wish for a summation?
I actually have a quick one. Just looking at the property value of that $1.5 billion or the $1.9 million that Mr. Neufeld's seeking for this property today, there's a lot of information here that needs to be researched. The 2020 is at the municipal board. I'd request that the board take my recommendation of the $3,443,000, and because there's such a huge discrepancy in the values with regards to what we have and to what Mr. Neufeld has presented, I'm asking the board to go with my value so further research can be done with regards to the actual lease, receiving this document ahead of time where there seems to be a lot of other important information that's required to come up with a fair, accurate value for this. It's I would feel comfortable with regards to the value that I presented and not the value that Mr. Neufeld's seeking, because there's so many unanswered questions that need to be looked at to come up with a true valuation for this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Yes, thank you. I have no unanswered questions. I'm very comfortable with where we're at. If the assessor has some doubts, they should have accompanied me on an inspection of it and then would have helped address these matters. And I'm not saying that today's assessor bears any fault for that. But this is enough time has passed. There's problems with this. You've heard what they are. They cut their roads. It's not serviced. The top floor is obsolete. The lease is a cost recovery lease. Let's just move it to market, and then look at the market, and then look at the issues, and then take into account that that general industrial did not thrive in the last 3 years. It did not go up. There's no such thing as an automatic up in Winnipeg. Everything went down except for multifamily apartment land and giant distribution warehouse in Winnipeg. Everything else went down. And during COVID. And the assessor was saying, well, just wait till we finish this and we can look at it. That's their problem. That's the assessment department's problem. That's what
Mr. Neufeld, sorry, I'm just going to stop you there. I just think we're getting, into
I know.
Slightly disrespectful to the assessor. So
it's not meant to be disrespectful to the assessor. It's the concept of the system that we wait for them to do something. We don't.
That's why there's a municipal board process, Mr. Neufeld, where we could do further evaluation.
It takes 6 years to get through.
Okay, I thank you both.
Thanks.
I thank you both. And we're just going to take a 5-minute break now.
10.
Thank you. And I would like to call this meeting back to order, and we are going to move on to item number 5 on the docket, which is 312 William Avenue. We are joined by Mr. Story.
Hello, everyone.
Mr. Story.
Good evening.
And I understand, Mr. Story, you're going to be looking to change the classification on this property?
It's got to be 4 acres.
Yeah, I have to sworn in.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Story, please state your full name.
My name is Jared Story.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Story, would you like to proceed first because you're arguing on the
Sure.
class?
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the subject property is 312 William Avenue, roll number 13069832200. And this is file number 223641. We are contesting the value today, and we are also requesting that that there be a partial exemption to this property based on the tenancy of 2 tenants who we believe ought to be exempted under the section 53(1) of the Municipal Assessment Act, based on the fact that they are indeed seminaries of learning. Is it your preference that I speak to the exemption first, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay, wonderful. So basically, this property, and I believe the assessor has it in his brief here, it's marketed as a warehouse primarily given over to tenants involved in the creative arts, and that's certainly true. But 2 of the tenants that we've identified here are North Forge. And if you go to my page 15, you can see North Forge is what we'll call a tech incubator. And so they are partnering now with a 4th-year academic credit with the University of Winnipeg. So this press release discussing this is included here for your perusal. But effectively, the U of Winnipeg is partnering with North Forge. North Forge, again, is a tech incubator. So it would certainly fall squarely within the parameters of a seminary of learning. So we have that here for you to see. And then Arts Junction, Manitoba. Now there are folks who occupy some of this space, and they provide training and materials for teachers and artists. And I've also included their their charitable registered charity data. That's on page 17. You can see their registration number. You can see that they are indeed registered effective as of the year 2008. They're designated as a charitable organization. They're typified under advancement of education and categorized by education in the arts. And I have some information on them on page 18. They run workshops and provide, again, materials and training for folks involved in the arts. So we do respectfully submit that those two tenants be exempted on this basis. And again, that's under section 53(1) of the Act. I've included the WASO decision for you. Now, the WASO decision clearly states that the owner of a leasehold interest that constitutes an ownership in real property. So I don't know that that's disputed, but I have included that in my submission for you today. So that's sort of the Coles notes on my submission regarding our request for the exemption. Would you like me to now jump into the value? Or do you have questions on the?
Actually, I'm just going to stop you there and let's just ask
Sure.
if anybody has questions on this. Thank you. Mr. Froelich?
I have no questions on this.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson
No questions for me, Madam Chair.
and Mr. Larondo.
I'm still reading, Madam Chair.
Reading or watching?
Reading.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be watching out of the corner of my eye.
I'm just going to ask Mr. Froelich, do you have no issues with this request?
No, they're both charitable organizations. On their websites, they're showing course curriculum where they provide workshops on a regular basis. So based on history and how panels have decided upon in the past, I have no issues with regards to the request. Our preference always is to do this through the formal procedure, but we realize that the agents won't make any money this way. So as a general rule, and because we need to do our due diligence, right? And so I've done my due diligence and I'm comfortable with regards to the exemption.
Oh, all right. Mr. Larondo, did you have questions?
No, if Merrick hasn't got a question and he's good with it, I'm good with it.
All right. If you would like to proceed then, Mr. Story.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. The venue was not contested at the time for this application. There was no value contested.
Okay, because Mr. Story, he's sitting at Mr. Story.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. What is the issue?
The secretary is saying that quantum is not under question here.
Sweet.
No, I believe it is.
I believe it is because you've got 972, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, no, we have
Yes.
a slight difference in the quantum, but if
Yes.
I don't
Was it
have the
checked off?
application.
Was it ticked off on the application?
Well, it should
Yeah,
be.
it was not ticked off.
Yeah. See, let me just confirm that as well, because usually I include that in my brief. And it is just classification liability, not quantum.
Okay. Well, in that case, that's fine. You know what? It's a good thing we're not too far apart on quantum. But in that case, based on contribution, Madam Chair, we will suggest that the CC40S be, well, and this is based on Mr. Froelich's number, be 697,000. And the CC60 would be the balance, which is 473. And so that would be fine. We're within, we're not worlds away. So the main issue here is to make sure that classification is appropriate. So I suppose if that's the case, then with that, I thank you.
Just, you know what, my my concern for valuation purposes, and just give me one sec here. Okay, I just want to make sure that we have it right because you know the issue is with our value, our square footages are different, Jared. So we got to make sure that our percentages are right. Just bear with me here for one sec here. So if I have here,
Merrick, the question here, we're going to end up at 1,170,000 in the end.
yeah, but the point is the breakdown for our purposes, it's important in terms of the valuation. That's fine, but it's from our side of things. Jared, just give me a quick sec here. What is what's the non-exempt portion? The 40S.
Okay, hold on. Let me just pull it up here. It should be in and around 59%, but let me just pull it up for you. We can go through it very quickly.
Why don't you have Jared go through? We have it on the record.
Okay, it's 640. Just
Sorry, Marcel, you're suggesting.
Jared should put his information on the record with the square footage.
Yep. So I did it by proportionate share, but let me just read it out to you so that, let me just pull it up here. Give me one moment. Okay, so.
Because the only one is Creeberry, which is taxable, correct, Jared?
It's Creatory. That's the art gallery. And they're actually taxable. So, okay, so we've got 30,453 square feet, of which, so there's Creatory, and then there's active personnel. They're in the basement.
Oh yeah.
So, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So 8,800 plus 3,500 is taxable. So that's
Why do they have leasable area at 28,396?
Yeah, ours is wrong because because what has happened here is like Jared pulled his from the
we're going from the
mailer.
Yeah.
You got to go from the 28,396. So you're gonna have to correct your numbers and make a recommendation. Then.
Okay. Yeah, because that's the basement. Okay, so.
Justin, I mean, yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Merrick's gonna have a recommendation verbal.
Give me one sec here.
Oh, right, because they're not considering the basement as that's the issue there. Okay, so if we just use, all right. Okay.
All Merrick's got to do is recommend the 972.
Okay, so 28,396. Oh, geez, this is that's interesting. Well,
for tax, so what we end up we have 43%, roughly speaking, for taxable, and 57 for 40S.
Okay, so mathematically, Merrick, here's how it works with your numbers. Okay. We have, the ones where we're not disputing the exemption, that's 18,153, right? Okay. And then the balance of what you're suggesting of that 28,396 is calculated as 10,243. So when I go and calculate the percentage, okay, so the exempt portion of 28,396 of 3, whoops.
So just
did that backwards. It's a little late. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, There we go. So it's 63.9%, right? 18,153 is 63.92% of 28,396, and let's call it 63.93. 63.93% of your value, which is, at least it was 1,000,000.
170.
170. Is then 747,981, and the balance is taxable. That's how the math works on that one.
And what's the balance?
The balance of
740.
the balance is 1,170,000 less 747,981. Balance is 422,019.
I was too busy doing my own work here, so just double checking with regards to what you presented, Jarrett.
Yeah. So let me just
I
sum it.
have 503 for 60T, and I have 667 for 40S.
Nope. So okay. So just very quickly. Okay. So
I did because I did 43% and 57%.
But it's
the
not
1,170,000.
But it's not 43. That's the issue. It's 18,153 is 63.93% of 28,396. Okay. And
So-
then further to that, 63.93 equates to 63.93% of 1,170,000 is 747,981. 1,170,000 less 747,981 is 422,019, and that double checks.
Okay, so my percentages.
Sorry, gentlemen, I'm just going to suggest that we just take a break so you can check your numbers.
Sure.
So nobody is rushing.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Sure. And I would like to call this hearing back to order. Mr. Froelich, I'm going to have you read your brief.
Okay.
To the roll, please.
Yeah, for sure. 60T. Okay. File numbers 22-36-41. Roll numbers 1306098320. The assessed value is $1,170,000 based on the applicant's presentation. And the breakdown of the valuation moving forward will be the following. Instead of having one class code at 60T, there will be two class codes. The first class code will be for $748,000 as 40S. And the second value will be $422,000 as 60T. And that should work out to $1,170,000. Is there any other information that you would like me to provide, Lady Chairperson?
I think that's fine. Thank you. And Mr. Sterling, you're in agreement with this?
Yes, that's acceptable. Thank you very much.
Right. So, and I'm just going to point out again that it was an error.
Yes,
Quantum was not checked off.
We did intend to challenge the quantum, but again, that was a secondary issue. The main issue that we wanted to address today was to have the class code amended to reflect the tenancy.
And thank you. We are going to move on to 101 Hutchins. And there is a preliminary issue with this item.
Yes, there is.
So we have a non-co-op. You would like to speak to this, Mr. Froelich, please?
Yes, we would. File number is 22-39-23. Uh, roll number is 140642 60600, and the address is 101 Hutching Street. We are asking for non-compliance for this property. This property was appealed on 2020, and the city of Winnipeg lost the decision to have this property, the non-compliance be awarded to us. So on page 12, what you can see here is this is just the shortened version of this. This is the registered mail that went out in 2012, stating what we were looking for. There's a signed signature for when this property was sent out. And unfortunately, what has happened here is in 2014, 2016, and 2017, the applicant or the property owner did not fill out the income and expense information. Prior to that, they had done it in 2015 and from 2018 on. But in fairness to the taxpayers of the city of Winnipeg, income and expense information is very important. It's an integral process for us to do our jobs, which is why we're asking for the non-compliance. Thank you.
And thank you. Mr. Story, did you have any questions?
I do, and just to sort of illuminate something that you said, Mr. Froelich, now this is a supplementary, and as part of the course of the 2020 appeal, the city requested this penalty and was denied, correct?
Oh, yep, 100% correct.
Okay, so now you're effectively asking this board to retry the same asked and answered
as a service to all the taxpayers of the city of Winnipeg and the importance of the 2017 receiving the 2017 income and expense mailer. That's why I'm making the request, but I'm also mindful of the history of the appeal.
Okay, and you're aware, of course, because I went back and I watched the old YouTube hearing, and you were actually the assessor who handled this, and you're aware, of course, that the owner had passed away, and that was why.
You had mentioned that to me, but the point is, Mr. Story, so when did the owner pass away?
I'm not sure, but it was certainly brought up to you in that hearing. And when I spoke to the CFO, he said, well, we've gone through this already. It was explained to them and it was accepted. So I suppose those are my questions. We know that, well, I mean, one last question, I guess, Mr. Froelich, is it typical practice for the city to try and do this once again once it's already been asked and answered? Is it typical to try and retry that same?
We are mindful of the history of what takes place at the Board of Revision. But the point is, in answering your question, so why didn't they fill out the income and expense bill in 2014, 2017, and 2016 and 2017?
Yeah,
so when you say there was a death, and that may or may not be the case, I didn't rewatch the hearing, but the point remains is there's 3 years where they didn't complete the mailers for us. So because it's an integral part of us to do our jobs, that's why we're asking of it. Okay, but we're also mindful of the decision that took place in 2020.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the question again because you didn't answer my question. My question is it typical practice for the city to attempt to retry searching for this penalty once it's already been denied by the panel? Is that typical practice?
Yes, it is. I discussed this with my manager today, and the point is we could ask for it, but we're mindful of the history of it.
Okay, and then I guess, sorry, one last question. Because this is a supplementary of an owner-occupied property, despite the fact that this has all been asked and answered and heard by a different panel on the exact same issue, on the exact same evidence, would any submission that was put forward to you in 2017 have any bearing on a supplementary that you've created in the year 2023 on an owner-occupied property? Is there any information that would have been supplied to you that would have influenced your work up here today?
It's about the integrity of the process, Mr. Story. It's about a legal obligation to fill out the income and expense mailer. And so that's why we asked the question.
Okay, no, but I'll ask you again. I want to be very clear.
Asked and answered.
No, it's not asked and answered. I've asked you now, does any response from this owner, would that have any bearing? It appears that this is not a modeled workup. It appears that it's done likely by hand, I'm guessing. So I'm going to ask you again very clearly, what you're calling a non-response that's already been asked and answered, does it have any bearing on the evidence that we're going to review today?
I think I've explained my answer to the panel members. And just for clarification, the panel members were different on October 25th, 2019 than the panel members that are here today.
Okay, that's not my question, but I think the board understands what I'm
Yeah,
getting
we'll
at.
just
So
move
I'll
on,
leave it
Mr.
there.
Story. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, those are my questions, Madam Chair, and I thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Anderson, did you have any questions to Mr. Froelich?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Laurando?
Am I on?
Yes.
Oh, there it is. So, okay, let's go back to your mailer. Your mailer went out on what date? June 8th, 2018. And it has a signature. Do we know who the signature was?
No, we do not. Well, it says Jay Naylor.
Okay. And says received, correct?
Yeah.
Board of Vision application. Okay, I've got no further questions. It's been received.
Okay.
To you, Madam Chair, before we go into camera. We got to hear from Mr. Story first. That's right.
Yeah, Mr. Froelich,
Yes.
to the best of your knowledge, the address has not changed, 101 Hutchings.
No, they have been consistent. I can't explain why there was a blip in the past, because even prior to 2014, we had received income expense mailers, because I could actually see it in my brief here, right? You know, I'm showing from 2015 on. I'd have to double check again. I can't explain it, but the reason why we go through this process is clearly why I've asked for it.
Right. And did you make an attempt yourself to contact them regarding this issue?
No, I did not, because because of the fact, because Mr. Story and I actually had this property on appeal for municipal board in 2018. And, the previous mailers, we received mailers in 2013, 2011, and 2007. So there are no issues moving forward, but for whatever reasons, the years that I've stated or that I've shown in the mailer, they didn't provide them to us. And I don't know what year that the person who passed away took place, but that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's all my questions. Mr. Story, if you'd like to give us your evidence on this.
Just very quickly, I've provided you with the board order, not to discuss quantum, but just to show you this was tried already and the request was denied. Again, I went back, I listened to the hearing. There was a request based on the fact that the owner died in, I believe it's February of 2018. Mr. Froelich was made aware of that at the hearing, and the panel denied the request. I don't think it's typical for the city to try this again. It's the exact same case under the same circumstances. And just from our perspective, this has been asked and answered by the board. The city pursued the penalty. It was denied, and now here we are again. So the reason for what Mr. Froelich is calling a blip is because the owner of this is Pratt's Wholesale. He passed away. That's the reason. They've not been. They don't have a history of being non-compliant. So I suppose I'll leave it there. But that is ultimately that's our main issue here. It seems odd to be pursuing this penalty for a second time when it's already been denied. So that's my presentation for you, and I have submitted that board order into evidence showing that that it was requested and effectively denied. So and I'm cautious not to speak to previous board orders, but in this scenario, I thought it was important to show you that it was pursued and effectively denied on the basis that I'm submitting here today. It's all the same.
You understand this is a new panel, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I certainly do.
All right. I thank you both. We're just going to take a brief
How about
reset.
How about we ask him some questions first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Froelich, did you have any questions of Mr. Story?
I have no questions for Mr. Well, the question I have for Mr. Story is because he's done so much research on this, is can he explain to me why the 2014, 2016, and 2017 mailer wasn't completed?
Yeah, the 2017 mailer is what we're talking about, Merrick. I don't know about 14. I don't know. I haven't looked into that. That's not material to our discussion today. The question is about 2017, which was sent out in 2018. And again, and you know this because it's been, you've had this discussion already. So it wasn't submitted in 2018 for the year 2017 because the owner had passed away. That's the reason for what you're calling the blip. So that's the reason.
So here's a dumb question. Does the property owner fill out the income and expense mailer, or does he hire someone else to do the income and expense mailer for the property? Because
our understanding is that it was his responsibility, and there was a change at Pratt's when all this happened. This is a fellow who had run it since I think 1980 or so, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know all of the those details. I know that.
okay.
When you tried this before, Mirk, you might know more about it than I do. You tried this before, it was denied. You're trying it again. The facts of the matter haven't changed.
Well, the fact is Leonard Bannock filled out the income and expense mailer in 2015. And did Leonard Bannock die?
His name is Mr. Leonard Baranek, and yes, he did.
He was the one who died. Okay, just curious because you said Mr. Pratt. So that's why.
No, it's called Mirk. It's called Pratt's Wholesale. They've been around for over 100 years, and the owner is the Baranek family.
No need to be condescending, Mr. Story. Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen. We can just be mindful here. Thank you. Ms. Anderson, did you have any questions of Mr. Story?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Laurando?
Where's this board that you supplied?
I sent it into the as rebuttal.
It's just underneath those files.
Okay, hold on. I just want to see it. Where is it?
It's with the same file label, but it must be labeled as a rebuttals.
Rebuttals. I don't see it.
Just 1 second.
Item 7.
Item 7?
I think so, yeah.
No, it's item number 6 and applicant rebuttal.
Item 6.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Sorry.
Okay, maybe you guys got it and I don't then. Let me go back. Maybe I got, when did you load that up?
Oh, it's been loaded.
Item 6.
It's item 6, but the
Yeah.
third item 6.
I've only got 2 on item.
2?
I've only got 2 on item 6. Correct.
No, there's 3 items.
There's 3.
Keep going
Go ahead.
down farther. There's more.
Not on my sheet, there isn't.
Oh, you want me to email you?
Yeah, please, email
Sure.
it to me. Read
No
it here.
problem.
I don't know why it shows up on yours, but not mine.
We're special. I'm sorry, Marcel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I send you the email.
Thank you. Oh, and there you go. Sending it to me as a WIN file. My phone won't open that up. Hold on. I gotta see if my computer will open it. Oh, yeah. Why today?
Because we're trying to watch hockey. We're not going to watch hockey. The gods are not allowing us to watch hockey.
You think I can find what I'm looking for now? The gods are against this.
You can't open it?
I'm opening it. Yeah, I've got to go back to my.
Oh, no worries. There's no garbage there, you're good.
So with the, are you there, Jared?
Yep.
So you're the CFO, when he contacted you, he was aware that these papers hadn't been filled out then?
Oh, what? Yeah. So I spoke with the CFO yesterday, as well as
Yeah.
recently as yesterday,
Yeah.
and he was surprised that he was aware because he'd gone through this as part of the in 2019 as part of the 2020 appeal. Because this is a supplementary, it's the same reference date of 2018. So it's the same. It's that 2017 form that was sent out in early 2018 that wasn't filled out. So he was surprised that we were hearing that again because we had already, again, as I mentioned, we'd already gone through it. He was not happy, to say the least, but yes, he was aware that this is happening today. Yeah.
But he should have still sent it in, correct? Because I mean, he knew he hadn't sent it in before, so he should have just sent it in after.
For 2018, yeah, I'm not sure if something was sent in was after. I'm not sure. I don't know if the question is whether nothing was ever sent in, or if it wasn't sent in on time. I'm not sure if it was not ever sent in. I don't know.
Somebody in the office received it. We've got the.
That's correct. Yep, absolutely. It was received.
And we do have the 2018.
Excuse me, but I'm
2019
asking.
mailer.
Huh?
We do have the 18 and 19 mailer.
And you got it back.
The 18 and 19, but not the 17.
And you're going after the 17 today.
Yeah, that's because the reference period is April 1st, 2020.
Okay, I've got no further questions.
Thank you, everyone. We'll just take a quick break to discuss this.
Absolutely.
And I would like to call this hearing back to order. And the panel has discussed this non-co-op and we are going to deny it. Mr. Froelich, if you would like to begin with your brief, please.
No problem. That took longer than I anticipated. File number is 22-3923. Roll number is 14064-260600. Property is 101 Hutching Street. The assessed value that we have for this property is $10,490,000. $10,490,000. Property's been built over a series of time between 1974 and 2022, which is why there's a supplemental. Wall heights between 10 feet for the office areas and up to 39 feet. The plan area that we have here is 234,080, and we have the leasable area of 243,174. Land to building ratio is 1.97, but that does not seem to be an issue because there has been building expansion on with regard to this, and there does seem to be good access for all the trucks to gain access to loading and unloading the property. As Mr. Story has stated, the building's been operational for over 100 years. The business leasable area. I had mentioned this beforehand, and Jared and I had spent a considerable amount of time in 2018 trying to figure out the discrepancy in the area. And what had happened is since, because we couldn't find a good plan, so I just went with Jared's number for the 2018 MBCOA. But then subsequently, when we sent out the original documentation for the 2023 assessment roll, our square footage was a lot higher than what you see here at the 243,174, which is the reason why a manual adjustment has been made for this property. On page 2, you can see the one of the pictures for the property. And subsequently on page 3, some more pictures of where it's located at. And on the bottom of page 3, where you can see the building expansion that has taken place. And this new area is for freezers. That section is the section which is 39 feet. With that being said, if you look on page 4, the top of page 4, you can see there's that little parcel of land right beside Shepherd on the most eastern portion of the core of the property. And then on the bottom of page 4, you can see where the additional area has been built, where they added on the 34,195 square feet for the property. So on page 5, the adjusted workup looks as the following. Using the 243,174 and a rent of $3.45, we're looking at a value of 837,978. Vacancy at 3.5%. Shortfall of 3.75 and 2%. Come up with a net operating income of 760,559. Using a cap rate of 7.25%, we come up with a value of $10,490,000, which works out to $43.14 a square foot, which overall seems very, very reasonable to me. With that being said, I got some comparable properties here with regards to the properties that are in the region. Some of them are book rents, some of them are actuals. One of them is a book rent. So we got 1155, 2017 lease at 108,000 square feet, 31 feet, built in 1979, $4.50. We have a book rent listed from Palliser Furniture at $5.73, utilizing 131,603 square feet. 979 Q8, 100,000 square feet, $5.20. Ceiling height's only 26 feet at $5.20. We have Sony Place, 228,000 square feet at $4.22 with 34 feet. And 140 Otter, 158,000 square feet. And this one seems a bit of an outlier because with a polar banknote, but it's showing up because when I did the research on our actual income and expense mailers, it is showing as a true net lease. On page 7 are some details of the good information that we have moving forward. So this gives us an overview of all the different areas that have been built at different times. There's essentially, so you could just see one section is 114,000 square feet. We got another section at like 86,000, and you could just see the breakdown of all the areas of where the extension took place. Because there are so many issues with regards to what was reported on the mailers and what we had in the system, I was in contact with the architect for this property who created these plans, and he signed off on 243,174, which is why the adjustments have been made in my presentation. On page 8, we have our cap rate study. And on page 10, we're showing some more pictures of the subject property with regards to a bit more detail where you could see the difference is. And an important thing when you're looking at the valuation for this property, the cost of new construction, the cost of adding on, the new area per se. Let me just come back to my file notes so I have it correct here. Is significant. They added 32,480 square feet. Construction's costs are expensive. So in mindful in our overall valuation for this property, you got to factor that in. And that concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
And thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, just a few. And I promise I'll be expedient just to run through this. So, Mr. Froelich, have you ever visited this property?
No, I have not.
So you've never been inside this property, just to be very, very clear. Now, in terms of the degree of finish, are you aware that the degree of finish is very, very low? It's about 6.5% of the total leasable area. You aware of that?
And that's reflective in the market rent that we're using.
Okay. But were you aware of that when you were selecting your comps?
Well, majority majority of the properties that we have are that for my comps are over 100,000 square feet.
Right.
So, yeah, like, and the 6%, the main office areas is on page 2. I'm not familiar what may be inside of the property, but on the front page of page 2, there's 2
you don't know.
levels.
Yeah, no, I know. Okay. All right. Land to building, you'd mentioned, this is sort of interesting. You said that the land to building, we can agree certainly that a land to building ratio for a mid-70s property typically would be 4:1. Now this is lower than that objectively.
It is lower than that, but access doesn't seem to be an issue with regard to this property because there's a lot of room for trucks that are shown in my bottom of page 4.
Okay, and it's an irregular parcel. Can we agree on that? It is indeed irregular.
It is irregular. It's a triangle.
Okay. And you mentioned something about you, and I agree. There's no issue with loading here, but you did say something about expansion. But just to be very clear, one of the reasons why land to building is important is so that you are indeed able to expand. Correct?
Yes, but it's not the be all end all because there are many circumstances where MLCC, the egg producing facility on Pandora, where they've expanded the property despite the land to building ratio of 4:1.
Right. Okay. But in order to expand the property, you need land, right? So it's sort of you see what I'm saying? That part of the reason why land to building is important is those two. You're talking about Burnbrae Farms, presumably.
The most important thing with regard to land to building ratio is access. And if there's access for land to building for trucks to load and unload, that is the predominant factor.
Well, and expansion.
Well, but the point is there are many agents when there's land to building ratios that are in excess of 4:1, they don't add any additional value to it.
Okay, that's a different conversation, but okay. So in terms of the 2%, I'm not going to get into that. Let's just suffice it to say that there's no study here to support that 2% other, as opposed to the, now this is back to the previous cycle. So this is where the management was removed, but there's nothing in evidence here for us to consider.
It's an owner occupied property. There's no tenant improvements, leasing conditions. So in this circumstances, you know, the 5% is irrelevant.
Well, okay, but to be clear, this is a fee simple valuation, correct?
Fee simple valuation, yep.
Okay, so in a fee simple valuation, it's not irrelevant. In terms of the cap rate, that's modeled presumably, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and now I don't want to speak about previous decisions. I'm going to leave that be, but that based on what we know about the history of this property, shouldn't that market value, that indicated market value per square foot be going down when they're adding square feet, just based on the on economies of scale?
No, considering because you got the improvements of adding the effective age will actually improve and change because what you've done is you've added 30, you've added new square footage to the property whereby it adds value. And but by the principle of economies of scale, as that square footage goes up, then typically the value per square foot, the overall value goes up. We're not suggesting it doesn't. We're saying the value per square foot typically would be on a downward trajectory, correct? That's the basic underlying postulate of economies of scale. You know, the point is if you're in a situation where you have a 25,000 square foot building and they expanded by another 25,000 square feet, the overall value of the property, if you've got a 1970s building and a 2000 building and you've added 50% new capacity for it, what ends up taking place is that the overall value per square foot is going to increase. And for example, when I look at the valuation that we've provided here of the $43.15, you'd be hard pressed to find any comparables that sell for that low of a price.
Okay, so let's just go to your comps now. Just to fast forward here, I'm not going to argue the rent comps, but the rent comps you have here are a bit odd. You've got a book rent. That one on Otter, that's $15.58. That's well, obviously that's between related parties. That's Pollard Banknote. We know that. And then Sony is a good comp, but that's 100% finished, where ours is about 6.5%. But I guess my question is,
when you say 100% finished, so you're telling me that this 228,000 square feet is 100% office finish?
No, but it's
Well,
fully
that's what you're
air-conditioned.
implying because, no, I take offense to this, Mr. Story, because,
Oh, well, don't be offended.
no, this is because you're trying to lead the board to say that 228,008 square feet,
Nope.
because the front part of the building here is 12,000 square feet and the
Okay.
remainder is warehouse.
So this is our client, and if you go to the BA record, if you go to our submissions, you can see it's fully air conditioned. It's a different degree of finish, to be certain, than our subject. Now,
And
I
what
guess
is
what
the
I'm-
rent in 2023, Mr. Story, for that property?
yeah, it's 422. It's okay, and that's
In
fine. And again,
2023,
well, that's post reference, right? We're talking about 2018.
but we're moving forward. Okay.
No,
I'll
we're
ask
talking
that
about
question
2018.
later on.
Okay, so let's talk about this property as something of an anomalous property in the Winnipeg market. Can we agree? And I'm guessing that based on the fact that your rent comps now, even though they are large, some of these are over 100,000 square feet smaller than our subject, correct?
There are not a lot of leases in place in the city of Winnipeg that are these are a handful of leases that we have that are 100,000 square feet. Well, Mr. Story, with all your knowledge, do you know of any leases that are more than 200,000 square feet?
Oh no, that's precisely my point. Is that this is a somewhat anomalous property. It's very large, and there are very few leased premises of this size in the city, correct?
Which is why our rent is $3.45.
Right.
Which is
Okay, but
significantly lower than my comparables.
Right. Well, I mean, your comparables, you have a book rent here as well, right?
Well, but I also have 520. I have
Okay.
422, and I got 450. You know.
Right. Okay. So based on the fact that this property is much larger than typical leased properties in the city, and based on the fact that we are trying to perform a fee simple valuation, then don't you think that the cap rate ought to be adjusted upward based on the fact that there's a limited pool of end users for this property?
Well, the cap rate that we're using here is it is not 6%. It's not 5%. It's 7.25%. It is it's a property where if it was at the end of its effective life, the property owner wouldn't have spent a significant amount of money doing a 34,000 square foot addition to it.
Okay.
So with that information, I don't think the property is in the poor shape that you're stating it. That would justify that would justify an 8% cap rate.
I didn't state it's in poor shape at all. I suggested to you that there's a limited pool of potential end users for a property of this size in Winnipeg. Now, the other, you've been talking about the addition. This addition is steel frame cooler space, correct?
Yes.
It's cold storage, correct?
Cooler space storage.
It's cold storage.
Yeah, it's freezer.
Just so we're very well. Hold on. Freezer space is different. Freezer space is typically sub-zero. This is cooler space. It's different. Okay. All right. And it's steel frame, correct? And you haven't. And just to be very clear, has anyone from the city been in this property? Has there been any inspection?
Due to COVID, we could not inspect this property.
Oh, okay. All right. I will leave it there. And I guess, Madam Chair, most of these questions are going to carry forward to the next cycle as well. So I think those are my questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Anderson, any questions to Mr. Froelich?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Loranto, any questions?
No questions.
I just have one quick question, Mr. Froelich. Do you know, there's a build on this building starting in 1974.
Yep.
Do you know the percentage of the square footage that is sort of allocated to the 1974 build?
You know what? I shall tell you that in a sec, because I wrote down the breakdown because there was such a point of contention with regards to the area when we were looking at this property in the past. And so I will tell you in a sec. Um, 106,000 square feet, built in 1974. And then there was another, and there was another 87,000 square feet built in 1977. So the majority of the building was built in the 1970s.
Okay, I thank you. That's all my questions. Mr. Story, if you'd like to give us your brief.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so 101 Hutchings, again, owner occupied. This is a property with a low degree of office area and a large degree of storage for well, grocery products. It was built between 1974 and 2022. Now the 2022 again is a steel frame addition that is cold storage. And just to be very clear, there's 106,200 square feet built in 74, with another 7,920 square feet built in 74, 87,480 square feet built in 1977. And then of course our steel frame addition. I was at this property yesterday. I apologize. I did not have a chance to get photos in time for evidence, but I did have a full tour of the building. I have a pretty good sense of it in general. So ultimately, I had some time while the previous cycle was going, or the previous applicant was going on. So I've made a couple of adjustments here, but I think we've adequately discussed the characteristics of the property. It does have a low land to building. It does provide utility and value to the owner, but from a fee simple perspective, we have a limited amount of users in this market. So that is the justification for an increased risk profile, which of course leads to a higher cap rate. We're not disputing the blended rent overall. We're not disputing the vacancy. We do continue to believe that the 7% from a fee simple perspective is appropriate, and we do apply it in our valuation. However, I think after seeing the property and after reviewing this and reviewing, frankly, the previous decision, I think that our cap rate at 8% is a touch aggressive. So I have made an adjustment to 7.5. I think that more adequately reflects this property. And that leads us to an overall value of $9,614,000. That brings us right in around, it's about $35 a foot, which is consistent with how we've this building has been treated in the past. So ultimately, those are my comments. Again, I'm happy to discuss it. I was there yesterday. I've been speaking with the owner and the CFO in anticipation of this hearing, and I feel very confident in 7.5. It is a property that does not necessarily fit neatly into the brackets that we have here in terms of cap rates. So I will make that adjustment here and suggest that a value of $9,614,000 is appropriate. And with that, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Froelich, questions?
Just 1 second here. So what was the value per square foot based on the 2020 decision there?
2020, this is very similar. I had it calculated out here. I think it's call it 35, but somewhere in that range. And this is fairly similar. I've mentioned to you, Mr. Froelich, that I think that as we add square footage, the value is going up, to be certain. But the principle of economy of scale would suggest that the cost per square foot goes down slightly, and that's exactly what's happened here. So what I'm recommending or suggesting today is consistent with the previous decision, and I think it makes sense. And I agree. You'd mentioned the 8% cap rate is high. I agree with you, but 7.5, I think I can live with, and that makes sense to me. So, and it does. I see where you're going. It does jive with the previous decision.
Just because I'm just trying to.
I think it's about 35 or 36 bucks a square foot, but I can.
Usually
or sorry, 39. I'm sorry, 39. Merrick. It was 39.75 in the previous decision. This is 39.50, so very close. But capturing the fact that we've added some square footage, the overall quantum goes up clearly, but the value per square foot goes down slightly, and so that to me that makes sense.
Are you aware of any other properties of this quality that sell for at $39.50 a square foot?
Yeah, I don't think we have any sale. Well, we have sales. We've provided sales, but again, this property is an outlier. It's huge. So no, I don't have any sales of this size. But we're also we're not worlds apart now in terms of on a per square foot basis. So no, I don't have any sales of properties that are, bordering 250,000 square feet.
But in terms of equity with other assessments, are a lot of the larger properties in the Inkster Industrial Park valued at $39.53 a square foot?
Oh, well, I have not reviewed other assessments. I have not made an equity argument here. So we don't argue equity in Winnipeg, we argue value.
Okay, well, it's funny because, well, you know what, no other questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, questions?
Just one, I did not hear you correctly on the cap rate, 7.5?
7.5 is what we're suggesting. My initial submission was 8. I think that's too aggressive. 7.5 makes sense. Yeah.
And your NOI is 751,226?
Yep. No change to the NOI. It's virtually the same as the assessor. We have this long-standing argument over the non-recoverables. I will leave that in the board's capable hands, but effectively, we're not. I think that's the only other. Well, our points of contention are the cap rate between 7.5 and 7.25, and the non-recoverables at 7% versus 2.
Okay. Just bear with me for 1 second, please.
Sure. Oh, I'm hoping my math is correct. I'll do it again. But
I don't think it is. If you look at,
oh no,
you look at your submission, page 15.
Yeah.
You have 10,016.
No, are you looking at? You're looking at maybe the 2023 supplementary. This is 2022
Okay.
as.
All right,
It's just
that's
2 different
probably it.
cycles. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'll do it
Okay.
again though, just to make sure, just to make doubly sure. So our
Yes.
NOI is 721.19.
Oh, see, okay.
Yep,
I
it's
asked
9.
if it was 751, and you said yes. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. No, it's $721.19. And when we capitalize that with a 7.5% cap rate, it's $9,613,586. So we round that then to $9,614,000.
Thank you very much. That's the end of my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Larondo, did you have any questions?
No, I think I've had them all answered if we want to be honest.
Just one quick question, Mr. Story. What
Yes.
was the square footage of the cooler space that was added? I didn't.
It's about 32,000 square feet.
Thank you.
Got it here. Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah, 32,480, Carrie.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, do either of you have any wish for a summation on this?
I'm hoping for overtime.
Okay. What?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Okay. And we're going to move on to 101 Hutchings for 2023.
I take it this is the sup.
No, well, the new square footage is for both of these.
Yeah. Okay.
I need to find my briefs.
Mr. Froelich?
With me here. File number is 22-3924. Roll number is 140642600600. Value that we have is $12,554,000. The information is the same here, and you could clearly see where I haven't adjusted the square footage. But when the initial mailer went out, we had 252,870. And that the new square footage now is 243,174. Pictures on page 2 and 3 are different. Number 4 is different. Number 5 is the same. What I have done is, and this is a point of contention, and this needs to be considered for the next one as well. You know, if you're looking at the permit construction here, and unfortunately they haven't put any values here, but here they're showing where they've added the permit on page 7 of 3,177 square meters to the property. And there's no value associated here. And then subsequently on the next page, it's the cost of the partial permanent foundation that was required for this. So what is the cost of adding this much value to the property? And so when we're looking at this, so initially the assessed value that was at $8.9 million in 20, the initial value, and I don't have it here right now, of $8.9 or $8.7 million, and now we're looking at $12,554,000 with the building expansion. Well, if construction costs are at least $200 a square foot, if you're adding another 30, we're adding more square footage. If you're adding another 32,000 square foot, you're probably looking at another $5-6 million added to the property, which adds value to the property, which is brand new property. And yes, I understand it's steel construction, but that's a significant amount of outlay. Unfortunately, the permits don't show any values, but we know that the cost of construction is significant. So with that being said, on page 9, what I've done here is the revalued property value that we have here is we have $3.96 as opposed to the $3.45. You're dealing with 3 years away from the assessment cycle. So what you're looking at is, as opposed to using a 2017 mailer, we have a 2020 mailer, which is where industrial rents have gone up. With that being said, we're using a 4% vacancy, 385 shortfall, 3% for other, to come up with a net operating income of 859,947, using a 6.85% cap rate to be more reflective of the new improvements that have taken place with regards to the property and an adjustment to the cap rate. We come up with the 12,554,000. What we have here is then we're showing some adjustments that have taken place. The market rents that we have here is 1750 Inkster Boulevard. We have it at $3.81. Wall height's only 22 feet at 134. We got at the 861 McLeod Avenue, we have the rent at $4.98. This is a book rent, but I did confirm when I did my research with regards to the property owner or the accountant for 861 McLeod. He said that market rent that they've used is reflective of market rents. We also have another property at 11505 Fife Avenue at $5.07, using 108,000 square feet, 31 feet, Belton 79. We have Gamble at 10-year lease for 82,000 square feet at $6 a square foot, built in 1968, so older than the subject property. And then subsequently we got the new lease in place for Sony Place, where it's 228,000 square feet, and it's Associated Beer Distributors. So 34 feet, at $6.33, which is significantly higher than what we're using, what we have. So just as a reminder, we're using a rent of $3.96, and all the rents that I've showed here for comparables, most of them are significantly higher. Cap rate information is the same. We did get the income and expense mailer from 2020, but what's interesting about this is this is the old information. They're showing a book rent of $1,040,000. So ours is less than that, but that's what they're showing on the old area that they had in existence. And on page 14, they're showing that the rent is triple net. That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any questions?
Yeah, just very quickly. Sorry, Mr. Froelich, you're not suggesting that the book rent is triple net, right? It's a book rent that's internal. That's not to be used. Is that fair?
No, but it's a reflection. It's just like when they book rents for car dealerships. It's just an indication of value. A lot of people use book rents. It's just like if we're looking at an office OFDs or OFAs, they'll put a book rent in place that say, or a ticketed rent saying what they would anticipate to get. So this is just a reflection of that.
Okay, but just to be clear, we wouldn't use that typically in a.
No, but it's useful information to say that we're being reasonable in our approach to valuation.
Okay, so again, these comps are even though they're large spaces, typically they are much smaller. In most cases, half or less than the size of our actual property, correct?
Yeah, but the one in Sony Place is like $2 and like 35 cents more than what we have for us for a market rent used for a similar size property.
Okay. All right. So I didn't look into that one, but that's fine. Now, are all of the inputs here, are these modeled or are these sort of done by you, or this workup?
Well,
just
we
looks a
had
little
to make
different.
adjustments based
Okay.
on the square footage, right?
Okay.
So
Yep,
what ended up happening here is, like I had stated beforehand, you and I spent a significant amount of time discussing square footage on this property.
Right.
So I think we have it right moving forward.
Yeah, I think so too. So, okay. But what's interesting is there's a huge jump in the market value per square foot cycle over cycle, correct? And you're
This is 3
attributing that, I
years.
think, yeah, but still you're talking, okay. Now, the other thing that I just want to point out very clearly, just so we're not mixing methodologies, you had mentioned that the cost of construction on the new build would add some value, but you've not depreciated the value of the old building then, right? So if you were to indeed look at a cost perspective, you'd have to depreciate the 1970s build if you were to suggest that the 2020 build had a $1 to $1 ratio or something like that, correct?
Yeah, depreciation is always important when looking
Okay.
at property valuation.
Okay, that's fine. And then in terms of the cap rate, just very quickly, there's no sales in this cycle submitted by the city, just this table. Is that correct?
Well, we already did our detailed analysis with regards to the cap rate study, and we feel very comfortable with the cap rate that we used for this property.
Okay, but I'll ask you again. There's no sales for us to review, correct?
No, this is not the venue. We have 8 properties that we should try to be done in 3 hours time. This is not the venue to discuss extended cap rates. That's what the municipal board's for.
No, I don't. Well, let's just say we don't agree on that. There's 2 places to talk about these cap rates, and this is one of those places. But okay,
Well,
that's fine. Those are my questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Froelich.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson,
I have no questions. Thank you, madam.
Mr. Laurando,
Did I understand you to say you dropped the square footage from 252 and changed down to 243, 174?
yeah, what ended up taking place is that that there was inconsistencies in the methodology. And this is coming from 2018, where Jared and I had worked on the municipal board stuff. And so in my previous brief, I got the information from the architect, and that's where we came up with the new 243.
Okay, thank you.
So so when it was implied that I was just putting numbers on a piece of paper, there's a reason behind that, and it's because of the inconsistencies.
I'm done.
all right. My question was asked and answered. Do either of you have a wish for a summation?
How about Jared? Put
Oh,
this
Jared has to
statement-
present.
Sorry.
Yep, thanks. I'll be
Sorry.
fast, I promise.
This is.
We might very well be out of here by 8, folks.
I might agree with
I'll
you.
run through it. Okay,
It
thanks,
just
everyone.
seems to
Okay.
be going on
I
forever.
think I'm gonna have to go to the King's Head. You know that, right?
Yeah, might as well. Okay,
2-1.
so we're at 101 Hutchings, of course, and I looked at this, and what we've submitted here, we've got a square footage that's too high, so I've made some adjustments again, as I mentioned, and I won't belabor this, but we came in at 350 per square foot. The assessor's at 396. The BA on this property is currently at 356. So I've applied 375. I've adjusted it upward. I think that's fair. It's frankly, we can argue all night about what the rent on this ought to be, but because of the unique nature, I think 375 is fair. So that gives us a market rent per annum of 911,903. Vacancy 4%, shortfall 385, shouldn't be disputed. Again, we're using a non-recoverable of 7%, consistent with our position overall. That leads us to an NOI of 776,698. My cap rate
You want to slow that down a bit?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
776.
776,698.
Yeah.
Okay, and just to be clear, previously we had suggested in our initial submission that for the 2022, which is based on 2020, that the cap rate ought to be 8%. We've adjusted that to 7.5. So based on our research, and it's all been provided to you, you've all heard it before, we are suggesting that there is cap rate compression in the industrial market between 25 and 50 basis points. So I think we're being very fair if we adjust that 7.5 to 7%. So again, our NOI is 776,698. Capitalized with a 7% cap rate leads us to 11,095,682. We then round that, of course, to 11,096,000, and that's $45.63 per foot. That's consistent with what I've suggested for the previous. I think that's fair, and we've heard all about the property, so I think I'll leave it there. We're going to suggest a revised value of 11,096,000, and if you have any further questions, I'm happy to discuss them.
Thank you. Mr. Froelich, any questions?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions.
Mr. Laurando?
I've got no questions.
I have no questions either. Do either of you have a wish for a summation on this?
Go Canada, go.
Well,
That's it.
thank you for
What's the
listening to
score?
us late into the evening. Appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you both.
I'll
Good
check
night,
on the,
everyone.
I'll check it on the score.
And all the items have been heard on the docket this evening, and this hearing is adjourned.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
Right.
Ah.